not taking like a self-righteous standpoint, but a lot of people right now feel as if with a lot of this isolation and helplessness that, we're more different than we really are. And I think one thing that people need to understand is that we're actually much more similar than we all really think. And if people can get together and start to, have conversations and put some differences aside, I think we can all kind of start to act more human again.
Welcome to the Drew Pearlman Show. Think of this podcast as the antidote to the fear, the noise, and the talking heads in the news. The show features an entertaining blend of ancient wisdom, empowering ideas, and cutting-edge, healthy living science to optimize your health and your life. All right, so let's dive in and get started. Today's guest on the show is Dr. Alex Lee. Alex is a chiropractor who practices full-time in San Ramon, California, and is the creator of Groundwork, an online group for natural healing and performance. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Happy to be here. What's going on, Mr. Drewski?
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Alex. So just so people out there know, Alex and I got to know each other through Instagram, and we definitely have a very similar outlook on the world. And he's originally from Massachusetts. And I know, Alex, you were also a college baseball player back in the day.
I dabbled. I did. Guilty as charged.
And so I was just curious, what led you down the path to become a chiropractor?
Sure. So I think I'd also like to say you growing up in similar areas. I grew up in Newton, Mass. You're in Framingham right now. Did you grow up there as well?
I did, Alex.
Yeah. So, the culture there of professional sports and, especially like the Red Sox almost being a religion. We had season tickets as a family from 98 until 2013. We split them with a few other families, and, pro sports there is just, it's huge. And, now that I'm not there anymore, it's not, I don't really pay attention to it. But as far as, growing up, that was always sort of the vision and the dream. And to answer your question, why I became a chiropractor now after, playing college baseball, I played at Wofford College in South Carolina. And then I played 2 seasons in Europe, 2 in Australia when I was done. And, I think what happens with a lot of people when, you can say hanging up the cleats or walking away from the game. I mean, I don't want to romanticize it too much because I wasn't at, I wasn't walking away from like multi-million-dollar contracts. I was just walking away from something that I pursued for a long time. I think a lot of people get to a point where they wrap their identity so much up in what they do. And whether it's art or whether it's music or whether it's a sport, eventually when that thing leaves your life, you feel like you have a void and an identity crisis. And as much as, I am a chiropractor now, I try not to wrap myself up in the identity of that. I still look at myself as, I'm Alex. I'm this soul within this body, and I happen to, put on my chiropractor clothes to go to work, and I'm there, a lot, and I enjoy it. But then there's also, I have a pretty good off switch. I have a pretty good, okay, now I'm golfing switch. I have a pretty good, okay, I'm now with my fiance switch, and we're making dinner. I also have a jiu-jitsu switch, which I just I just turned off 20 minutes ago to get on this call. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of different hats that I wear, and I like to think similar to a natural health standpoint that I'm a pretty adaptable person as far as being able to jump back and forth between things, but also at the same time stay pretty even keeled and have people know what they're getting when I'm there.
That's beautiful.
So hopefully that answers that question a little bit.
Yeah.
It's almost funny to me, like being like, oh yeah, I played baseball. I forgot all about that. It's still in there. I just don't, I don't need to put that on if I don't have to.
Right. Alex, in terms of your work as a chiropractor, you've mentioned to me that the body has an innate ability to heal and self-regulate when we give it, the tools that it needs. So for somebody caught up in lots of fear, lots of self-limiting beliefs, how can they rediscover that healing potential within them?
Sure. Well, and before you hit record, we were talking about this briefly, but health and ease is our body's default state. So all we can really do is kind of departure from that when we're not, living in accordance with the natural laws of nature, of what our bodies naturally need. So I always break it down as far as, looking at a few different categories for people. So obviously people talk about, mind, body, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it. But then as far as, tangible things that can facilitate our body's innate ability to heal at a higher level, I always look at 8 different things. So movement, nourishment, sleep and rest, the mind, and kind of what our mental concepts are and our subconscious, connection with the outdoors, connection with others, belief in something greater than self, and then our life purpose. So ultimately, I think a lot of people, when they, kind of go the holistic route, or let's just take movement as an example, people really look at like, kind of a check the box mentality, which I think is a fallacy. You need to look at all of those and understand that they're all integrated, and they all kind of, it's not like a perfect wheel of, like 8 slices of pizza. They're not all like perfectly cut. They're all going to kind of blend into the other ones, and they're all integrated, and they all have to be looked at, holistically. And I think even now that word has been really, I don't know, I wouldn't say abused, but it's been a lot of people that have used the word holistic really in the past year, I'd say, have kind of shown true colors. And there's been, even within the, air quotes, holistic area, holistic community, there's been a bit of a division. People being like, oh, okay, you're just another one of those trying to use the word and jump on the bandwagon. So for me, that's kind of just, I see that and my body just, I get like that pit in my stomach, like the ugh. So, but no. To answer your question, I think looking at those areas, and also just hearing that, because a lot of people don't get that. I'm not going to throw any sort of profession under the bus, but most don't measure what I would consider life force, like what causes us to live and what makes us different from something that is not alive. So, when soul leaves body, what happens? Like what is it that isn't allowing us to, oppose gravity and resist entropy and chaos to rip us apart? Like what is that? Like, how do you measure it? So when I work with anybody, I'm always trying to identify any sort of like limiting beliefs that they have to kind of get in the way of their own innate potential to heal. But then also like, okay, what are some vitalistic markers that we can look at with people? And, for me, a lot of that's just, simple, like, trying not to overcomplicate it, but walking speed and grip strength, I say, are the 2 things physically that we need to be able to do till we take our last breath. And when those two start to go away and decline, you get a pretty rapid decline of physical health. So those are that's kind of like the simplest, like, bang for your buck. If you're going to turn the podcast off now, like go for a brisk walk and hang from a bar. Like that's where it starts. So
That's great. Yeah, I was telling before we started recording, I was telling Alex that he inspired me to get a hanging bar in the basement here for myself and my son. And Alex, you were just kind of going into a little bit some of the reasons behind why, this is something anybody can do. I mean, whether they're stuck in their house or wherever they are, just hanging from a bar. What are some of the benefits and some of the reasons that might be helpful for people?
Sure. So, and we did talk about it, and I gave a good answer before you hit record. So
I know.
I'm gonna try to not get in my own head too much and try to say the same thing. Some of the benefits of hanging, I look at like going back to the whole, default state of health, right? Like we're born with perfect health, and all of these, industries and specialties that have popped up in health are just there to pretty much put a name on something when you've departed from that default state of health and of ease. So when I look at hanging, I look at, from our very first moments coming into this planet, we have these things called primitive reflexes, which are basically things wired into our DNA so that before we have these learned traits, such as like, getting up on our 2 feet, walking, shaking someone's hand, speaking, we have these things that are even more primitive than that. such as, if you stroke a baby's cheek, they're going to turn their head. And if they're hungry, they're going to act like it's a nipple to breastfeed from. And that's just wired in so that we know so that we can get nourishment right away when we're born. Another one is the palmar grasp reflex. So this is where hanging comes in. If you put your finger in a baby's hand, they're going to squeeze it really hard. And like, I always test it anytime I'm with a baby, just because it's fun and babies are fun to be around. But you put your finger in a baby's hand and it's like you're playing like tug of war all of a sudden, because they don't want to give it back to you. And neurologically, if a baby's like intact when they're born, that's one of the things that they should check at a hospital, that they have that grasp reflex in there. And if everything's working fine, they should have it. But, within an hour of birth, you could put a broom over a baby's head, put it in their hands, and they should be able to suspend and hang their body weight from there if they're healthy, which is kind of wild. But the way that I look at it is, if we have that wired into us, there's obviously something coming from, an ancestral standpoint from primates, back when, we swung in trees, that makes it so that that's a survival trait. Like, we need to be able to hang, we need to be able to grab things. So going back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like, walking speed and grip strength are the two things that need to be measured. And if you look at the structure of the shoulder, the anatomy of it, we're supposed to get the arm overhead. And it's just amazing how many people have lost that because, modern lifestyle doesn't require physical competency from us in a lot of ways. Like, we don't need to get our arms overhead. I mean, some people are, putting things in the refrigerator, things on shelves, like a little bit above their head. But for the most part, most people aren't getting their arms over their head. And if you just look at the structure of it, we're supposed to be able to get it, 180 degrees above our head and be able to work from there, and be able to suspend our entire body weight. So, when I look at physical competency, I'm looking at, walking speed and grip strength, but then also, the ability to grab things, the ability to climb, the ability to crawl, cross crawl, the ability to push, pull, hang, all these things. So, benefits are amazing just for shoulder health, grip strength, decompressing the spine. And then, you can get, I get up there, and it's kind of how I measure where I'm at for the day. Like, if I get a good hang in, I should get to a point where it's beyond just a physiological stress and stimulus. It becomes, emotionally, I have to really start to dig in, and psychologically and spiritually, I get to another level. So for me, it's almost, I call it a hanging practice, because I feel like hanging meditation might glorify it a little bit too much, but it's definitely like a moving meditation that I do. And consistently 5 to 7 minutes a day is where I'm at now. But I mean, anyone can benefit from 3 times a week, 30 minutes just to get started. And even if they can't get their whole body weight going, just getting the arms overhead and even getting a little bit of traction, just pulling up until they can kind of tolerate their body weight. But yeah, it is nice that you built a bar in your basement for you and your son that wasn't, like an actual like drinking bar.
Yeah, right. It is fascinating though, because I really, before listening to you and some of your writing and some of your interviews, I didn't really even think about that whole concept of hanging. So, I mean, someone that wants to get started in this, like an old, whether they're old or young or whatever, they could just start like for a few, like 5 seconds, or start by propping something under their legs. Is that how you would, get someone starting to do a hang?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I've had the same bar for 7 or 8 years now, and it's one of the, I don't know, the $20 ones that you get at a sporting goods store that, it has it has the screws in it, and it breaks down into like 6 different pieces, but it goes in the door frame. So to hang, I actually have to bend my knees so that my feet aren't touching the ground. So if I were to ease into it, and I've had my dad do this, just literally put your hands up on the bar, and then, however deep you squat technically is how much weight you put on the bar, right? Like if you were to pull your feet up off the ground, that'd be all your weight, but then you can manipulate that so that it's just, your hands above your head. I realize the video is not on, and I just have my hands up in my room like now, like an idiot, but, yeah, just even getting a little bit up, and then, some people can't even tolerate that position for more than 5 seconds. And it's like, if all you can do is 5 seconds, then you do 5 seconds. And then, a good goal for that week would be able to get to 6, right? You just keep kind of grooving that movement. And then eventually it'll just, get back to I'm not saying you're going to be hanging up there for 20 minutes at a time eating meals, but you're going to be getting to a point where, pretty quickly you'll notice some good changes. But 3 times a week for 30 seconds is a good, a good jumping off point for people.
That's great. That's great. So you, Alex, you recently told a story that I absolutely love, and it was you were trying to hang for a bit longer, I think over 10 minutes, and you had a friend call you up, and you were talking to him, and he said something that I found to be really fascinating, and I'd love you to just tell that story.
Sure. Yeah. So I was, so I'd say in April or so of last year, a friend of mine posted on Instagram 2 different people that broke 4 minutes hanging in the first, in a day. And he had only known, I think 4 or 5 people over like 10 years that had ever broken 4 minutes. So obviously I got fired up that day at work when I saw that, and drove home, got on, put the bar in the door, started recording for some reason. I usually don't really compete with exercise, I think that's a kind of losing battle, but I had the video on just for myself. And then I had a timer going so people couldn't say that I faked it. And then it was the first time I ever just let myself go. So I hung on I broke 5 minutes. I was trying to break 4, but one thing that always jumps around in my head is that, you can always do anything for 1 more minute. So I got to 4 minutes. I saw the timer and I was like, well, if I did 4 minutes, I can do 5. And I did 5. And then I was like, well, I just did 5 minutes. So I got another minute in me. So I've got 6. And then I dropped it like 5:30-ish. But I always try to keep that in my head. Like, no matter how bad things are, like, this is where training starts to carry over into real life. Like, no matter how bad things are, you can always do something for 1 more minute, or you can always do 1 more of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So for me, I started hanging. I realized I could do 5 minutes. So I was like, okay, I can do 5 minutes every day until 5 minutes is no longer, that much of a challenge. And I got to a point where I, again, was like, okay, I'm going to see how far I can push this. And I did like 7 or 8, and I kept getting stuck at like that 7 or 8 minute mark. And I was like, damn, I'm explaining all this to a friend of mine, and he's like, well, if you can always do 1 more minute, then you shouldn't get stuck at 8 minutes. You should be able to do 9 minutes, then you should be able to do 10 minutes. It's obviously just something in your head, right? Like, everyone talks about the 4 minute mile, how nobody could break it. And then in 1 year, somebody broke it, and then 7 more people broke it like right away. So it's all these, the tethering of our minds to a concept that, you can't actually break past a limit. So, I was talking with my friend. He's like, well, I give you permission to do 10 minutes. I give you permission to break 10. And I was like, it was funny, because I looked at him and I was like, damn it, you're right. I was like, okay. And then I think I actually went golfing that day. I came back. So after playing 18 holes, you'd think you'd be a little bit tired. I guess golf isn't that strenuous, but it was like 15:01 that I hung for. So I broke 10 by 5 minutes, like the first time that I had permission to do it. So it's just one of those, like, everyone thinks that if I told you to hang from the bar right now if I told you a minute was really hard, and you'd get to 45 seconds, you'd be like, oh, this is impossible. But if I didn't tell you anything, if I just said, hang on to this bar for as long as you can, you'd break a minute, no problem. You just keep going, because there's no number in your head. So for me, it was just that, created barrier, I guess. It was just, it's not even like, I'm sure now I could give myself permission to go do 20 minutes. I don't want to go there mentally, because it's like, I got down and I couldn't open my hands for like a couple minutes. I legitimately had pins and needles in my hands for how long I was hanging. But, it is fun to, step out of like the comfort and the order, I'd say, and go into that kind of that chaos and that unknown of just like, all right, like, let's see what happens. Worst case, I put my feet down and I'm still in my house. But to voluntarily step into that is always something for me that's really empowering, because it just takes you out of that comfort zone and really just tests the limit, right?
Absolutely. And it's a powerful idea, that whole idea of giving yourself permission, just to think about that. We had another interview I did months ago with Rolf Potts, who is a travel writer, and he travels all over the world.
Vagabonding, right?
You got it. Vagabonding. Exactly. And he said basically, if you want to travel the world, he said the first thing to do is you got to give yourself permission to follow your dreams. And I just thought that was great. That so many of us, we just don't give ourselves permission to whatever it is, to find our power, to be great, to travel the world, follow our dreams.
Really funny that you mentioned Rolf Potts, because I did a podcast interview like in 2015. So before I even went to chiropractic school, I was doing a baseball jobs overseas podcast. It was an interview for international baseball players. And I was saying that was that the gentleman who was interviewing me, it was one of his books that he was also, really into. And we had talked about before getting on the air about vagabonding, and just the idea of, at that point in my life, being able to pretty much put what I owned into a backpack with my baseball equipment and be able to, travel around the world. I was, getting paid not very well, but I was getting paid enough to live and travel the world and get train tickets to go different places. And, when if we had, a week off within the season, be able to, go to Italy or go to Switzerland or do all this travel in my 20s. That was, really instrumental at the time to developing and, just kind of getting the wiggles out in your 20s before really settling into what I'd say is, my life purpose, which is, chiropractic or healing or performance or however you want to call it. Right. Like my intro at the beginning, like putting a label on it and identifying as it is, I think a little bit of a dangerous game for some people. And, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with everything. And
nice.
Yeah, just really cool that you spoke with him.
Yeah.
That was a huge book for me, that it was like, to do it, you just have to start doing it and then you figure it out. Right.
Right.
You just got to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alex, I'd love to hear about the role of nature in your life. I mean, I know you're in San Ramon, beautiful San Ramon, California. Here we are. And here I am in frigid Massachusetts, but I'd love to hear about the role and just the influence of nature in your life.
Sure. So let's see. So I live in Hayward, California, which is it's like a 25-minute drive in the morning to San Ramon. So, I guess, wow. I'd say the biggest thing in the past year that I really, really dove into. So I graduated from chiropractic school in March of last year, March of 2020. So right when all the lockdown stuff began, and school was so much like indoor time that you don't realize what's not really clicking for you until you kind of have a couple weeks away from that environment. And you're like, oh, it's because I haven't been seeing the sunrise and the sunset, just the simplest things that are kind of our birthrights. But for me, nature is, having that intimate connection with the outdoors and just when you have that, it just regulates pretty much everything to like a normal level in your life, from, like an emotional standpoint, from a sleep being regulated standpoint, from, what you want to nourish your body with standpoint. And for me, just even being outside, even in a more urban area where a lot of people live. So in the Bay Area here, just something as simple as at lunchtime going for a walk and, having the shirt off and getting some sun on the skin. And I do as much as I can to try to stay connected to nature in the most natural ways. So, the video's not on here, but, I have salt lamps going in the room whenever the sun goes down. I wear Earth Runner sandals, so they have a copper conducting bead so that I can ground to the Earth's electromagnetic frequency when I'm walking. When I go past trees and plants, I'll always just touch them just to, kind of get that grounding effect. But, I'll go to the beach, I'll sun gaze, I'll get my feet in the sand, I'll go in the water, I love everything about just the natural world, because it like I was saying earlier, it just connects us to our default state, and it's our birthright to be able to just be outdoors and enjoy, plants and enjoy seeing animals and just being in that environment as much as I possibly can, especially after going through, a 3.5-year program where I felt like, we're studying all these natural and holistic things on paper, but it's so much different when you're not connected to it naturally outside. We're in a warehouse building with Wi-Fi buzzing around our heads the entire time under fluorescent lights. And it's like, wow, we're really, for what we're learning, we're really kind of doing it backwards here. So I just really, I feel so good in the past year, just having that regulated. And I think it's one of those societal things that, culturally it's, I don't think the light bulb was really good for like human health in any way. And then you look at all these other luxuries that are really like, tech driven, that take us farther and farther. Anyway, they take us away from our state of nature. Rubber, synthetic soled shoes, being indoors, all these different things that, basically don't make us any more physically resilient than we should be, just from what nature is. So for me, nature's kind of everything. Like I think if, and people can, if people look me up on Instagram after this, they'll get a better idea of some of my values and my personality and kind of what I stand for. But if I was joking around with someone the other day, like if all I really want from this, like right now, so this is March 2021, all I really want is for people to just kind of like leave me alone so I can just be outdoors in nature. Like if I was, if I was in an action movie, I would just be like, karate chopping like evil scientists, just so that they could leave me alone and like let me be on my porch in a rocking chair, like looking at the sunset. Like that's honestly all that I want out of life. And just that like connection with nature and I don't know, simplicity, man. Like I have pretty simple values and I try to keep my world small, but I feel like in that process, I have to kind of stand up and voice a lot of things that I feel that are just kind of like deep inside my DNA blueprint. And I have to like fight just to get to like this simple, like leave me alone state, which is, I don't know, like it's just funny. I laugh at it because I understand the irony of it all. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Alex, for anybody listening right now who's feeling a little powerless and hopeless about their life and about their future, if they were sitting with you right now on the porch or, hanging with you or something, what would be one thing that they could maybe do today to take their life in a new direction?
Good walk. Take a good long walk with some brisk pace, I'd say, outside. But I'd say more than that is, I think this past year so much has been about, like isolation and separation, and then almost celebrating that. And I know that what's happened this year, for me at least, is I've had so many high quality connections that I've made with either, reconnecting with people that, I think on a similar wavelength to, and, I kind of flew my flag. So some people came back into my life in a good way. There's also some people that kind of, went out by the wayside, which is fine. Like they'll circle back in. That's okay. But, I think the biggest thing is connection. And I've had so much quality connection in the past year. And a lot of that has just been rooted from me being able to stand, in my power and kind of speak my truth. And all of that is really circled around, like you were saying, the body's innate ability to heal. Like it all comes from that, and people know what they're getting from me. But so much of it is just, I've had to get there by, having conversations with people, and, whether it's just on the phone or, I've done probably more in person this year with people than, any other year, just almost as an act of rebellion, I would say. But like, getting together with people and just opening up, being vulnerable. Like this is the most vulnerable I've ever allowed myself to be. And I feel like, that just helps you shed layers from yourself, that maybe you've outgrown or that you don't need anymore. So for me, like the biggest thing has been, getting together with people and connecting. And then also, just taking it upon myself to be like a radical truth teller. Like I don't allow myself to lie to myself, and I don't allow myself to lie to other people. And, at the same time, like there's been, kind of like battering rams, like there's been some headbutting with some people. And, I feel like my ability to tactfully say things has gotten better. And like civil discourse has also been at an all-time high. Like I don't disrespect somebody who has a different point of view from me. And I feel like, not taking like a self-righteous standpoint, but a lot of people right now, feel as if with a lot of this isolation and helplessness that, we're more different than we really are. And I think one thing that people need to understand, is that we're actually much more similar than we all really think. And if people can get together and start to, have conversations and put some differences aside, I think we can all kind of start to act more human again. And ultimately, I think being human is empathy, and being able to, step into other people's shoes and see where things are at for them, and kind of, walk a mile in their shoes. But other than, the physical movement part, which I feel helps people get out of their own minds and out of their own heads and back into their body and kind of more integrated, I feel like the biggest thing is, connection. And it's been breaking my heart seeing, kids out of school, kids at home all day, kids on Zoom calls for, 8 or 12 hours and not being able to be with their friends, or, elderly people, stuck in nursing homes, or families saying, we can't see you, or, worse, like hugging through a plastic plexiglass thing. Like, I'm like, all of this seems so unhuman. I don't know the correct word there, but, man, like it's just connections at an all-time low for some people. And I do feel, part of me really, really, really hurts for them, because I remember also, having a more antisocial part of my life where it's just, we need a certain amount of connection every day, man. We need touch, we need handshakes, we need hugs, we need to be with people. And, that's what I would say, like just the connection and the movement to at least start to get some momentum going in the right direction. Right. I know that mental health is at an all-time, mental health issues are probably at an all-time high, meaning mental health is at an all-time low.
Right.
But that there's hope, and everybody's loved. So I think that's really what it comes down to. Remembering that, and then remembering that people are on your side.
Last question here: if you had the opportunity to travel back in time 30 years, what words of wisdom would your current self share with your younger self?
I think I was 2 years old then, so it probably would have been like, how to take a crap in the toilet or something. I don't know.
Maybe we'll say 25. 25.
Yeah. I'll change your question a little bit. No, I don't want to change your question too much. Should I go back and give myself advice when I was like, maybe like 10 or 12?
Yeah.
Like kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Or even a teen. Yeah. You know what? I'll answer your question as much as I can. I think I didn't enjoy the ride enough at a lot of points. I was, thinking about the future a lot, and kind of hoping that I would arrive at some point. Like as a kid, wanted to, play Major League Baseball, and just wanted to get there, and didn't really enjoy the steps along the way. And looking back at just using the baseball career as an example, I look back and 12-year-old Little League. My last year Little League was, some of the last time that people put on a uniform playing baseball, like after you're 12. And I didn't enjoy that enough. And I look back, and that was honestly the most fun I ever had playing baseball. Like more fun than, high school varsity baseball, more fun than Division I college baseball, more fun than, when I played overseas anywhere, because it was just, being a 12-year-old kid. And then you go to 5th grade the next day, and then you talk with all your buddies at recess about the game the night before, the game that night. Like just, I got caught up too much in wanting to like have the next thing, and not just being able to sit with myself there and just be able to enjoy being around friends and connecting, and having my parents in the stands and having everybody else's parents there, and us just, being kids. So I would say slow down, enjoy things. And I also stressed about like, finding a life partner, and my fiance is I don't know when she's going to wake up and realize that she's like infinitely better than me, but I guess that's like one of those things where I hope she doesn't realize, but, it's one of those things where I didn't think I was going to ever really find that. And now that I have, I realized I just wasted a lot of time, like stressing and energy thinking that it wasn't going to happen. But I don't know, maybe that's one of those necessary stressors that you need to force yourself to become better and level up in some way. So yeah, I would say enjoy the moment, and then don't really worry about how things play out, because, it's kind of the same as like, you've always got one more minute to hang, or you've always got one more minute to do everything. It's like, everything's always going to go the way that it's supposed to, good or bad, however it's perceived in the moment. It's going to ultimately, like, I'm fine now because everything that happened, even if it seemed unsurmountable in the past, has gotten me to this point, and I'm okay right now. Like, I'm doing fine. So things will keep going, and I'll be able to bounce back and adapt to whatever. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great, Alex. How can people learn?
Or I'd say Bitcoin. Find out what Bitcoin is and invest in it a lot. Once that becomes a thing, I would say that too. But
there
I don't want to change my effect too much, because I feel like I'd just be, sitting on an island somewhere right now. If all that.
All right, cool. Bitcoin. All right. Alex, how can people learn more about you and your work if they want to find you?
At dr.alexlee. So at dr.alexlee on Instagram. A lot of my good friends just got let out of Instagram jail yesterday. They started showing up on people's feeds again from, getting censored for a bit. So I was going to say, if you listen to this in the future, I might not be there anymore, but it looks like, at least for now, we're either in the eye of the storm or we're out of the storm. So that's good. I should still be there for a bit. Also my website, I don't even know if anybody has ever been on it, but aleechiro.com. If all else fails, you can get in touch with me through there. But yeah, I like connecting with people, and obviously, connecting and responding is another thing. Like, I feel like I'm still like low hanging fruit for a lot of people. They're like, oh, okay, I can probably message you and get a response. And I mean, unless it's like a really weird request, I pretty much always respond and pretty cordial. And sometimes I even send voice messages to people, because I don't like to just type on a phone all the time. I like to let them hear my rambling voice. So
cool.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. It was great to connect with you.
Drew, you're the man. Keep Framingham safe, okay?
Okay. All right, buddy. Take care, Alex. Thank you for listening to the Drew Pearlman Show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. In the words of Mark Twain, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, and catch the trade winds in your sails. Explore, dream, discover, and stay well, everyone.